Tonight. My name is Anna David. I'm a professor and consultant in obstetrics and maternal fetal medicine. And I suppose I'm Pran's academic boss, but actually Pran was my boss many years ago when I first started doing subspec training. So I first met Pran, in fact, when I was pregnant with number 2. And Pran looked after me. He was just wonderfully, so caring, so thoughtful, and a really great doctor. So here to welcome you tonight, a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm going to introduce Pran. He's going to speak for
2 or 3 hours.
2 or 3 hours, okay. 2 or 3 hours. And then Charles Rodeck is very kindly going to close. And then we have a reception, which is in the Wellcome Trust building. So to do that, you go up here out of the steps at the top, and then you actually go left, and that takes you out onto Gower Street, and then you head north, and you go all the way up to Euston Road, and then you turn right, and the Welcome Building is there. And there's drinks, there's also food, so please do stay until about 9:30, so which should be a really good celebration. So for those of you who don't know, at UCL, to become a professor, you have to be at the same level of achievement as somebody who's employed by the university. So it's not just about being a clinical professor, it's actually about being a professor at the same level. And that means that you have to show sufficient engagement and output in research, education, institutional citizenship, and impact. And I think it's fair to say that Pran has had huge impact in all of those 4 areas. So by way of a brief introduction, he started at UCL in 1982 and did his medical training here. And in fact, I think this is the first lecture theatre that he came to in September 1982. Didn't look quite the same. He said the seats were a little bit less comfortable, but you probably were sitting in here for 2 or 3 hours, getting rather hot, and yes. And then he did his BSc at UCL, got a first, and that was a sign of things to come. He was a gold medal award winner at the MRCOG in 1997, and then did his MD at King's in 1999. And he's also given back. So as well as being trained, he's training 19 subspecialty trainees, many of whom are in the audience, still 4 to go, so not 19 completed. But he's also been a huge architect of the Fetal Anomaly Screening Programme, was the chair since 2012. And so it's really wonderful to have all of you here tonight to celebrate Professor Pandya, a suitable boy, Professor of Fetal Medicine. Thank you.
Anna, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Before I forget, I just wanted to say a few thank yous. So first of all, thank you very much to Sarah Mayhew for putting up with all my foibles and challenging me around the meeting. And I am challenging personally. And thank you very much to Anna for supporting my application. I really didn't think that this is something I'd ever achieve. And Anna was brilliant and supporting me through the whole process. So without Anna, I wouldn't be here. And then finally, thank you all for coming. It means a huge amount to me to see so many of my friends, family, people I train with coming here. It's a big deal for me. So thank you. So Suitable Boy, a very pretentious title. I know a lot of people are saying, what the hell? What do I mean by Suitable Boy? And so my first title was From Fetal Cells to Pre-Fetal DNA, and that will make sense as I talk. That was the very first title I had, and people who know me said, this isn't you. This really isn't you. You should think about something a little bit more appropriate. And that's why Suitable Boy. And hopefully towards the end of the talk, it'll make sense. My sister Rhonda passed away on Monday. A lady with a big heart, who loved me dearly and loved all of us dearly, actually. Rhonda lived life on her terms and was a really fantastic person. And she'd be very proud. So, what's more important in life? Said the big panda, the journey or the destination? I would like to talk to you about my journey. So it started with my grandfather, who was born in the late 1800s, and at the age of 16, he left his village in Gujarat and decided to sail from Gujarat all the way to Africa. He was intending to go to South Africa, but he was seasick and tired, and after about 40, 50 days at sea, he stopped in Mombasa. As a young 16-year-old man, very ambitious, highly intelligent, very gifted. He died at the age of 51, but by that time, he had become a very successful businessman, an entrepreneur, somebody who was a politician, who got knighted, and a great philanthropist who gave to charity and had a hospital built after him. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my dad and my mum, and then me, born in Kampala, that's my mum's mum, in what was actually a beautiful place. So I was the youngest of 4 sibs, sometimes thought of as a bit of a mistake. I would often joke that sometimes you have to, you get the best, even better, and the best comes last. And they just have to wait. Life in Kampala was idyllic in many ways. A very chubby little boy who enjoyed life, and it was a beautiful place to live, even though we were there very briefly, because Idi Amin came along in the 60s and decided that he was going to deport all of the Indians from East Africa. And what you will see there, actually, shall I change the lighting a bit? Tell me if you prefer this. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the original pictures of me in 1967 with my mum and dad walking to the aeroplane to come to sunny England. Not so sunny. That's me on the left. It was a very bitter cold winter in the 1967. There was snow, never seen it before. But actually, we had the family and we had our life and celebrations and all the rest, and we were going to settle into this brave new world of England. My recollections of my education were interesting, and those of you who know me well know this story. So I was a devout Hindu vegetarian, and my parents was really devout, very, very tough. Went to primary school, and there lunches were served, no choice. Meat or fish, boiled fish. John will remember my hatred of boiled fish or meat. There's no choice, no vegetarian option. My parents went to see the teachers. They said, well, he either eats what he's given or he doesn't eat. And so therefore, all I had was those little milk bottles that you remember in your break, the tiny little milk bottles that you had. And my mum or my brother would come and pick me up with a banana and some food. I would scoff it down my throat because I was extremely hungry in those days. And then from Tunbridge, from New Malden to leafy Tunbridge Wells, and I'm extremely grateful that some of my old friends are here. They are circled around here, but you have to hunt them round. It's very good of them to come. Tunbridge Wells was a really interesting place to live in those days. It was beautiful, conservative, quiet. I was the only Asian kid or non-white kid in school, but that wasn't an issue. There was no issue. I don't remember racism, discrimination. I don't remember those issues. You were ginger, you were 4 eyes, you were whatever. It was a lovely place to be at school, but I wasn't very academic. My talents were minimal, and apart from cricket, which I loved enormously and still love a lot, my attempt at athletics, I wasn't bad. Phil was a great sportsman. For me to be in the same photograph as Phil is a great achievement for me personally. And I was in Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, but academically, clearly at the bottom of the class. 18 people in our class, I was probably about 17 or 18 in practically everything. And then my parents moved again to London, and I went to Mill Hill School. And at that time, we moved quite late, and my father's business changed and all the rest. So I had to go to boarding school, and this was moving from Tunbridge Wells to London was a real change, because actually Tunbridge Wells was very easygoing, it was a gentle environment. London had a real edgy feel to it, and I felt very much a fish out of water. Alexander, one of my closest old friends, there he is. That's me in our first year at Winterstoke House. And then boarding school, well, I wasn't made out for boarding school, honestly. It wasn't really me. I hated it in the first couple of years. I was terribly homesick. That telephone there reminds me of trying to call home. There's damned coins. You'd push the coin, beep, 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 and the coin would go through, and you'd have to go again and again, eventually get through. I just didn't enjoy boarding at all. It wasn't made out for me in the first couple of years. I then loved it towards the end, but I really hated it. Beginning, and I remember my sister-in-law, Viva, kindly bringing me food on the weekends, because we came home once every 3 weeks. Saturday school, 4 o'clock home on Saturday, Sunday back by 9 p.m, and Sunday exeat. So the other thing was you went home after chapel at 11 o'clock on a Sunday and back by 9 o'clock. So it really wasn't made out for me. The bacon sandwich, well, that is when I turned. I had been a very good Hindu boy. Honestly, God help me. But that was when things changed. I played a lot of sport, and the food just was insufficient to survive. And I would bring Indian snacks, and Alex and I would swap snacks around and stuff, but it just wasn't enough. So I was tempted, and the first thing I had was a bacon sandwich. God help me. And I haven't looked back since. But then at a young age, I developed symptoms of abdominal pain, weight loss, fever, night sweats, change in bowel habit. And being an Asian kid, the presumed diagnosis was that I had abdominal TB. I was very lucky at that time to be referred to Eric Beck. Some of you will remember him. An absolutely fantastic doctor, a great physician. In every way one could define a great physician, a wonderful doctor. And he took care of me, thankfully. But trust me, as a young teenager, being admitted into a Nightingale hospital with people dying around you, and the whole thing was extremely traumatizing as a young kid. And of course, the investigations were just barbaric. So a barium enema, so someone who's got inflammatory bowel disease, they would give you Picolax, which is horse laxative. It would make any horse have complete diarrhea. It was terrible stuff. And then having an enema. And then on top of that, having a tube shoved up, and then barium pushed around your abdomen, someone with a lead glove moving the barium in your abdomen when you had pain. I mean, it was hard. As a young kid who was just trying to get through school and get through life, it was a tough time. But that was it. I had Crohn's disease, and suck it up and accept it and move on. I was lucky though at school. I had some great teachers, and they inspired me. And clearly, I wasn't terribly academic to start with, but I had great teachers, and I saw science as being the way I wanted to move forward. And I'm really grateful that Mr. Chilton's here, who taught me, and his wife, Marcia, was a neonatal nurse in our obstetric hospital. So I met him through that, and I'm grateful he's here. I had some really good teachers who inspired me to do science. And that's why I thought, okay, this is what we're going to have to do. Careers advice. Now, that was a joke in the 70s. Mr. Critchlow, do you remember Mr. Critchlow? God, awful man. He said, Pandya, you're not very clever, are you, really? You're not really up to much. I think you'll be well suited to go to Polytechnic and read biochemistry. Biochemistry, Polytechnic? Oh, God, no. This is not what I want to do. I want to do something else. I want to do something different. Lo and behold, miracles happen. I get through my exams. And first year medical school, September 1982, many of my friends and colleagues are here. It's so nice to see you. Thank you. You'll recognize yourselves up there. And this is where we had our very first lecture in September 1982. And I don't remember who was the dean of the preclinical school, but I remember Bob Sihami. Do you remember Bob Sihami, the oncologist? He came here and he gave an inspirational talk about what it's like to be a doctor and what it meant to be a doctor. And I remember that talk. Anyway, it was a really enjoyable time. I loved preclinical medical school. It was a bit of a ball, actually. This is my sister, Rana. We had a great time. I thoroughly enjoyed the whole aspect of being a preclinical medical student, but I learned one lesson very early on, and I had lots of friends who helped me, that to survive, there's a very simple balance. You work hard and you play hard. And I really had to learn that balance, because we studied and we worked hard, but by God, we had a good time. But we really did, and that is where, away from the first time in my life, I really began to understand that actually there's a simple equation in life, which I keep telling my daughter, that you have to work hard in order to play hard. Then went on to do a BSc with the brilliant Ivan Reut, John Playfair, Neville Wolfe, and Jonathan Brostow, which was great fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was at Middlesex Hospital, great inspirational people, leaders in immunology. I mean, these were the gurus of immunology of their time. And then, of course, my Crohn's disease that had been playing up caused recurrent problems. I had fistulae, I had abscesses, I had pus coming out of me. It was terrible. And again, I was really, really lucky, because at the Whittington Hospital, the surgeon with an interest in Crohn's disease was Russell Locke. I owe this man a huge amount. Absolutely phenomenal. And I remember the day, I had lots of problems. He said, you're going to have surgery. You're going to have a bowel resection. So in the morning of the operation, the stoma nurse comes to see me. I'm a 20-something-year-old kid. And the stoma nurse comes to see me with different stoma bags, saying, this is where, I said, no, this is not me. You're not doing this to me. Get Mr. Locke. I didn't say get Mr. Locke. I said, please, can you ask Mr. Locke to come? Now I would say get Mr. Locke. No, please, please, please. So Mr. Locke comes to see me on the day of my surgery. And I said, look, I can't do this. You give me an end-to-end anastomosis, whatever it takes. I don't care what you have to do. You just do that, please. And he did. Thank God. And that was extremely, and I owe a lot to him. And then we passed our BSc and we got our first. Hurrah! Great fun. It was great fun. We all got through. And then clinical studies. Well, I didn't really enjoy medicine and surgery in the old cruciform building. I mean, it was very traditional, very old-fashioned. Got up early, do your bloods, the nurses tortured you, the consultants were very difficult. The juniors were very nice, but it was tough. And then eventually in the obstetric hospital in 1987, in my fourth year or second clinical year, in room 6 in the obstetric hospital, I was called to assist a midwife to do a delivery. And that, for the first time in my clinical career, was a life-changing event. Here I am doing something which is positive and useful, bringing life into the world. It felt like a life-changing event to me. And it was extremely moving. And I felt, wow, this is it. This has got to be what I'm going to do. This bottle of champagne, which I still have, was a bottle of champagne given to me by the very first baby that I assisted the midwife to. I didn't, the midwife and I. Like everything in life, it's the midwife sitting there. We were only there to support them. So that was, that's the very first bottle. And I was on the firm of John Osborne and Jimmy Steele. This photo was taken obviously a lot later, but that was the actual room. And that was it. I said, okay, this is what I want to do. We had a lot of fun at medical school. We did lots of great things. We went to Camp Siash. Chan was a regular visitor, obviously. Always a challenge to get a room when he was around. And then a pilgrimage to Blackpool. Lots of fun with dinner parties. And we had a thoroughly good time. An elective in Thailand. Lots of crazy things. I'd never ridden a motorbike in my life. On day 1, I was on the back of a bike with John. On day 2, John said, you better get your own bike. and up the highest mountain in Thailand we went. We subsequently went on a sailing trip with Louise and John, and it was just a very memorable trip. That's all I can say, Louise. Exactly, quite right too. And miracles happen. There we are. We managed to qualify as junior doctors in 1988, thinking we had arrived. Thank you to Melissa for getting my report. This is my original report from my time at medical school. I actually really tried hard to do well in obstetrics and gynecology. And they had a system there whereby if you were good and they liked you, they would write a letter to you, Mr. Silverstone will remember this. You'd get a letter written to you to say, please apply for a post as an SHO. Not good enough. And then I sat for the prize exam. I really wanted to do something. No joy. But I passed, I was through. And then I was a house officer actually for Mr. Lockett at Whittington, which was a bit bizarre. And I had my first publication as a case report. And then at that stage, I thought, I want to do obstetrics and gynecology. I'm going to get some career advice. Humphrey Ward, that many of you will know, is a very charming obstetrician gynecologist at UCLH, a very senior person. I went to see him. I went to see Gay Henson, who's here. You won't remember or may remember, but I went to see, does remember. I went to see her as a junior, as a house officer, and Russell Locke saying, I want a career in obstetrics and gynecology. What do I need to do? They said all the right things. It's very difficult, very hard. You know, you really need to think about things. I'm praying this is going to work.
It will insist on keeping a long-winded English name. So, everyone, may I introduce?
So, I had some advice about whether at that time, it wasn't straightforward to get into the specialty, and it wasn't Gail. It was actually Russell Locke who said to me, maybe you should think about changing your name. And I just thought, it's not going to work for me. I'm not going to do that. There are things I'm willing to do, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to do my best. And I had aspirations. I had aspirations. I wanted to succeed. I wanted it to work out. And I thought, okay, I'll apply for the SHO post at UCH in obstetrics and gynecology. I didn't get shortlisted. Damn it. But as Alexander knows, can you guess where this is? Esperance. So when I do things, I like to do them really well, and I like the nice things in life. So Alexander and I, it's an example. It's the only foodie example I'm going to give you. Went on holiday to France as kids. We camped, we had a tent, we had scrambled eggs or omelette and stuff every night. We cooked and we saved every penny we could. Our parents gave us a bit of money. We saved it all up for one meal. And that was Esperance in Vézelay near Chablis, a 3 Michelin star restaurant. We went for lunch. We had these clothes that were all creased and what have you. We didn't have an iron or anything. We got them on. We walk into this restaurant as kids. They're thinking, these idiots can't pay for this bill. They thought, they're not going to be able to pay for this. Anyway, we saved every penny. We had the meal. But it was an example, and those of you who know me well will know, that it was an example of we'd make the sacrifice to get the best. And that's what I wanted. I had aspirations. So as a houseman, Julian Cura's brother, Michael Cura, who married Vanessa Phelps, was a registrar working for Sarah Muirhead-Allwood, and I was working for Sarah named William Muirhead-Allwood. Anyway, another story. And I said, I want a career in obs-gynae. I really want to get in. What should I do? And he said, why don't you apply for an anatomy demonstrator post? Because that was recognized. You do FRCS, you get your anatomy demonstrator post, and then you apply for a job. And I thought, there's no way they're going to ever accept me, this mediocre doctor, nothing really on the CV, as an anatomy demonstrator. I go to the interview, all the surgical greats, John Unsworth White, Spencer Harland, Fred, a bunch of people go to the interview. The anatomist asks me, what was the most useful piece of anatomy you ever learned? Help me. And there's a pregnant pause. I thought, I don't know what to say. I said, if I'm being honest, I thought anatomy was so badly taught, I can't remember any of it. And there's like, disgust. Fiona Moore laughed, and she then said, why do you want the A&E consultant? I said, well, I want to do, gynae oncology, ha ha. And I want to be a surgeon and I want to do this. And lo and behold, I got appointed. Miracles happen. Up at 5 o'clock in the morning, reading the anatomy for the day, teaching all day anatomy, Sloan course in the Strand at night, going home and studying. And FRCS Part 1 was a nightmare. The whole thing. We go up to Glasgow and I'm in the bedsit with Spencer Harlan, photographic memory, brilliant. And he says, well, we better do some revision. I said, yes, yes. So he throws me a foot. I said, oh God, I stopped at the ankle. He said, what do you mean you stopped at the ankle? He said, here's the bloody foot. And he went through it all. And the next day I have my exam. You know the punchline, but I'll tell you anyway. So this examiner says to me, what do you do? I said, I'm an anatomy demonstrator. He said, well, you're either very clever or very stupid, because everyone lies to me. They don't tell me they're anatomy demonstrators. So I said, well, okay, do your best. So he throws me a foot. So I got through, can you believe it? My FRCS Part 1 Glasgow and London. And London was a bugger because it was all about English language being really tricky. Lots of people doing the exam. The ligament of Bigelow is taught in adduction. So what does taught mean? Too bad, laddie. You either know what it means or you don't. Anyway, miracles happened. I got through. And now my career was looking a little bit more hopeful. There were 2 Gold Circuit SHO posts. And one was at Queen Charlotte's, and the other one is at Mary's. These were 2-year posts, because normally you've got 6 months or a year. And I wrote to Peter Mason, bless him, who very kindly took me around the department. I got interviewed and I got taken on as an SHO for 2 years at St Mary's. And this was really, it was a great time. Great teachers, Peter Mason, Leslie, Frank Loeffler, who I loved, Alistair Fraser, John Smith, Richard Beard, all sorts of fantastic teachers. And we had a firm. So you had the consultant, SR, registrar. You felt part of a team. They nurtured you, they supported you. And it was a really, really good experience. And what made a difference to me was my peers. Because in those days, the consultants were consulted upon. It was the SRs and registrars who ran the show, who did the work. And the consultants, this is what, they would come in if you call them, but they were consulted upon. And the real people who saved your bacon all the time were the registrars and the SRs. And it was see one, do one, teach one. But we had great teachers, and Richard's here. Thank you, Richard. I know Liz is here. Thank you, Liz. And Guy's here too. And I remember Guy at that time had just finished his MD with Kipros. And Guy would be walking on label with a portable ultrasound machine, and be a woman in threatened preterm labour. And he'd measure the head, measure the tummy, measure the thigh bone, and say, estimated fetal weight, 850 grams. I said, God, this is fantastic. It's really clever. This is, everybody else is going, well, patient and all this rubbish. No idea. And then in A&E, a woman would come in with bleeding and passing clots, and you go, vaginal examination, the os is open or closed. It's a orange. I mean, I don't know what the hell it was. Guy would have an ultrasound machine. There's your baby. I'm sorry you're having miscarriage. It was really, really good. And I learned loads. And the SRs at that time were fantastic. They were so good at teaching and supporting us, and the registrars. There are many others I haven't got up here, but really, really helped to support us through the training. And I'm very grateful. That time, you could see the professionalism. You could see how doctors managed the institution. It was a time when European Working Time Directives, that swear word, didn't exist. We worked hard, but you learnt and you were supported by your bosses and by your SRs and registrars. And you really, it was an apprenticeship that I enjoyed. I enjoyed it. It was really, really good. And the more you did, the more you learnt. And this 40-hour week stupidity didn't exist. And of course, medicine is an apprenticeship. It doesn't matter how gifted you are. Kipros and Charles have done millions of hours of scanning. That's why they're so bloody good. It's not because they have divine inspiration. People need to think a bit harder now. And then from there, I wanted the best job next. And the best King's, the best registrar job in the country at that time, in my humble opinion, was King's Brighton. That rotation was brilliant. And so I went to Brighton, I saw Davor Jurkovic for the first time as a registrar. I met all of these consultants, and I went to see Kipros. And you had to see all the consultants beforehand. So Stuart Campbell, Kipros, Don Gibb, John Studd, Linda Cardoza, and others. So I went to see Kipros, and Kipros said, "Do you work hard?" I said, "Yes, I try to, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Well, you won't get the job. We have somebody in line, and he's a Greek guy, he's already done his research, and he won't get the job." He said, "Do you have a boyfriend?" I said, "I don't have a boyfriend." He said, "Do you have a girlfriend?" I said, "Yes, I have a girlfriend." He said, "It won't last." But it was the most exciting time in fetal medicine then. I mean, very much in its early infancy of development. It was a time of huge growth and development. And here I was, a nobody on the road to nowhere, suddenly working in this exciting environment. A young Maggie Block. She wasn't there when I was there. This room, I want to talk for 2 seconds about this room. I'm going to go over a bit. Is that okay? Yeah. This is a very famous room, and I spent many hours. It's very accurate. This is Kipros's. I'm sure he's still got it. His desk in his study overlooking Dulwich College. The green leather bias on his thing is completely right. In those days, we had the floppy disk drive computer thing. The only thing that's inaccurate in this picture is that ashtray is way too empty. Way too empty. It was definitely empty before the photograph. But we spent, you do your day, your clinical work, you finish your clinic. So clinics would run till 6, 7. The nuchal clinic would run, I'll talk a bit about that in a second, till late. And then if you were lucky, you'd be invited back to Kipros's to write your papers. It was a time of being surrounded by very, very clever, gifted people. Eve was a young fellow, highly ambitious. Kurt was in a dark room doing Dopplers day and night. Davor was a registrar then. Eric was doing clinical work at that time. Steve Carroll, John, Roslinda, and the wonderful Baski too. So it was a time of really clever people, highly ambitious, really wanting to succeed. And at that time, there was a paper which we saw in the first trimester, prenatal diagnosis, trisomy 21, in fetal cell from maternal blood. It was a paper from Sherman Elias and Jolie Simpson's group. But Kipros said, "Okay, this is your project for your MD, go off and do it." So magnetic cell sorting, CD71 transferrin antigen, centrifuging 50 mils of blood, getting the Buffy coat, trying to pipette that out, labeling it with CD71, trying to sell. Oh God, it was a nightmare. I was rubbish. I was so bad at it. And needless to say, it wasn't very good. But if once you got the fetal cells, you had to do something to it. And at that time, fluorescence in situ hybridization had just come out. It was a new technology to look to see if there was aneuploidy or not. And so I was sent off to Nottingham for 2 days to Don Cardy's private laboratory to learn how to do this fishing. I was awful. But anyway, I went off, learned, came back, set up a fish lab in Kipros's unit. And Kipros would say, right, I'm going to do a CBS, usually around 6 or 7 p.m. So get Pran in the back room. It's called, right, this boy is going to phone you tonight with the results to tell you if your baby's got an aneuploidy or not. Okay, please start. So CBS sample done, most of it sent off to the proper lab, a small bit's given to me, and here I am trying to fish, looking down a fluorescent microscope. No idea. Anyway, I was not very good at it. Phoning, in those days, no mobile phones, phoning the landline, this poor people waited 2 o'clock in the morning. I think your baby's okay. Anyway, it was a paper, we got it published. And then we were with Davor and Eric and Stuart and Kipros, we did the celosynthesis, which was a nice paper. It was the first decent paper, a short report in the Lancet. The very first world laser happened in 1992, and this is a program about Kipros, sadly not about me. The surgeon's cut, And just to prove I really did exist, that's me just cleaning the toilets out. I didn't before the patient used them, that I was there. I promise I was there, and this is proof. And it was an exciting time. God help us, bringing the laser down from Southend and setting it up and doing it late at night. And you know, what an amazing time, an amazing place to be. And at that time, Kipros had published a paper on about 800 babies with increased fluid in the back of the neck, and he coined this term, fetal nuchal translucency, and he had this brilliant Brazilian called Maria Brizo working on it. And he needed somebody to be able to go to district general hospitals and help to set it up. And luckily, that became my MD thesis. I got 11 first author publications out of it, a number of other papers. And my two favorite papers from that time were the repeatability of the measurement and the implementation in the low-risk population. And we did the repeatability study. I read some papers, you know, Index Medicus, how do you do it? Looked it up, got some papers, did the study, got rejected by the British Journal, rubbish, you've got it completely wrong, going to use the Bland-Altman technique. Kipros says, you're idiots. Go see Altman and sort it out. So we take Sarah Johnson, who some of you will know through ISWAG. Altman doesn't look at me. Looks at Sarah Johnson. Sarah Johnson convinces him to help us with the paper. And I think we did a very nice study on the repeatability. I love the implementation study because this was the first study on nuchal in a low-risk population. And it didn't, I think, get the recognition that it should have done, but I like that paper very much. And then on to my registrar time and SR time. Well, I wanted to come back home, and UCLH was home. And I was very fortunate to come back here. I spent a couple of months at UCLH to start with. And then I went to the Whittington and I worked for Gay Henson and Albert Singer, and Gay is here. And that was a really, really brilliant place to learn in that firm. It was such a spectacularly busy hospital. You really had to get on and do things. And Frederica Eben was there. I think I worked for Miss Morgan as well at the time. And then I went to Harlow, the wonderful Patricia Wilson, and came back and helped Alfred and Sarah. I did my first ectopic, laparoscopic ectopic with Alfred. And it was a great time to be a registrar, back where I wanted to be. And Sarah was the boss, was also just been appointed a consultant at that time. But again, in those days, it was my peers that made a difference. Azim, who is here, who was my SR, Sarah Bauer, Carl, who was clearly the most experienced obstetrician I had ever had the privilege of working with, trained in South Africa and again here, could deliver anything, and was always as calm and cool as a cucumber through every adversity. And I learned a great deal from it. I'm very grateful you come. Thank you. John Morrison, of course. David was working with Michael de Sweet at that time as a senior registrar with a renal background, but was one of my peers. Mel, Pat, I'm sorry about that photo, but I've got so many of you. I chose that one. Tim, sorry again. And of course, Ertan and Joseph too. And they were a really great bunch of people. I learned a huge amount from them, and I was very grateful. I'm talking about learning from things. It came to the MRCOG part 2. And I thought, well, I've got to give this a proper go. And I studied pretty hard. And I had all my registrars and SRs teaching me all the time. So I went to Tim and Meta at home, and I would give them my file and say, ask me any questions. And all the SRs and registrars, and of course, Gay Henson's teaching at the Whittington, infamous teaching, brilliant, brilliant teaching. And I go to my viva for the part 2s, and Miss Uttergen, as a consultant in Hornchurch, said, I know you, I can't ask you any questions. I said, look, it's fine. No fetal medicine, ask me anything you like. And lo and behold, she asked me about, I can't remember, whatever it was, and Victor Bonney or something, you know, whatever he did, and blah, 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 and I knew it. And miraculously, I got the medal. And it was a great thing to get, partly for me, but very much so for my family. It was great. The college were really good to my mum. My brother came, my dad was abroad at the time, and it was a very special day and a very special thing, and I'm enormously proud of it. At that time, I also managed to get a few papers out. I was rather hoping Lynn would be here because I put her up in big letters. I got a paper through with Lynn, still doing a little bit of research, but not a lot. And then Kipros, bless him, supported me to getting my MD thesis submitted and accepted. And that was essential, and it was really good of him to help me and support me through that process so that I could get it in and accepted. And now here I was, MD, MRCAG, medal, looking good. Oh, but the bloody Crohn's. It came back with a vengeance when I was a fellow with Kipros. I had subacute bowel obstruction as a registrar on SI. I had weekends on call when I was drinking water only to try and get through the weekend because I couldn't tolerate any solids whatsoever. So it was bloody hard. And I don't need violins. I'm just being honest with people that think that it's easy. It's not easy. It was hard. But hey, I got through, and in 1999, Russell Locke said, look, mate, you're not surviving on this. You need to have your operation done again. You've got strictures, they need to be sorted out. Same story, no stoma, Mr. Locke, I don't want it. Do what you need to do, get it done. And he did. Great man, he was due to be here. It's his 80th birthday tomorrow. So he's abroad, but really thank you, Mr. Locke. And then Charles comes to me. I was thinking, right, suspect training at UCLH, all sorted out, can't wait. He said to me, look, I think you should go off to Toronto. John Kingdon's just gone out there. I think this will be good for you, you know. Oh, God, I don't really know if I want to do this. But anyway, they gambled on Dick Hupkis. Thank you, Dick, for coming. A great friend. They gambled on Dick and us joining. What a mess we made of that place. This was us with Mark Kilby, John Kingdon, who's a consultant at that time. I had a great time, but John was fantastic. He said to me, you need a skill. You're going to go to sick kids and spend a day a week doing fetal echo. And I was very lucky to be taught by Lisa Hornberger, Jeff Smallhorn, and Shijin Yu, gods and great people in fetal echo. And I spent a day a week. I really learned how to do cardiac scanning, and that was fabulous. And Greg, really one of the three great fetal therapists that I worked with, absolutely brilliant doctor, very, very gifted guy who was trained by Charles, who went out to Toronto, and a number of the other consultants there, Matt Sherwood, and it was really, Matt Servant, sorry. It was a really, really fantastic time. Great teachers, but convinced me that I loved fetal medicine and I just wasn't cut out to do maternal medicine. I wasn't good enough. It just wasn't me, but I loved it. We had a great time. We did lots of fun things. But then I got an email from Sarah Crichton in 1999 saying, you either need to come back to London or stay out there, but if we've got a job coming up and you need to compete to get this job, so you need to be back in London. So I came back to London, to UCH, and at that time, Charles, Lynn, Eric, and Donald were consultants and running the show. And the consultant post was advertised, and it was time for battle because I really wanted this job. I had come back from Toronto early. I wanted the job. And Annika Kell was a year ahead of me in post, looking strong. And I had to come in and really go for the job. Well, those of you who know me know that I quite enjoy competition. And I did my very, very best. And I was so grateful to be appointed here as a consultant on the 1st of the 1st, 2001. And like all consultants, you think you've arrived. Ha ha, ha ha. Snakes and ladders. You get a great big snake and you're down at the bottom of the pit again. You think you've made it, but actually you're a nobody on the road to nowhere yet again. But I was very lucky. I had a skill in fetal echo, and Rob had been appointed by Charles to run the fetal cardiac services. So I worked with Rob in the fetal cardiac service, which was great. And I still do, and I love it very much. And then the first appointment was to steal Raj Dave from the Whittington Hospital as a superintendent sonographer. And we then took over obstetric ultrasound from radiology and made it our own. but Raj was a great appointment and a great friend. Ian Jacobs was appointed in about 2004-5, Ian's here, and was set up the Institute of Women's Health, and the new hospital was coming on, and Charles decided he was going to retire way too early. And this was in 2007, where I felt I was still a kid and didn't really know what I was doing, but Charles said, Fran, you're going to take over the clinical service, subspec training. Donald, you're going to run the academic service. And it was all a bit of a shock and a horror. Those of you who remember my complete disgust at the fact that I had to think about running clinically this department. It was a big loss to us at that time. And then I decided, you know, that there, from my perspective, and those of my trainees know that I've considered 3 pillars to being a clinician: research, teaching, and clinical work. And so I published 64 papers as a consultant, nothing brilliant, but my favorite paper I'll talk about later, and some chapters. And with Charles's support, I was editor-in-chief of the 3rd edition of a book. And it's one of those things I wanted to do, but probably never again. It was a huge amount of work. Dick supported me, Neil Sabir, and Ron Wapner, and we got it translated Spanish, Mandarin. It was a huge amount of work, but something that I really wanted to do. And thank you, Charles, for trusting me to do it. We set up a bunch of courses with Fred and Dick and a whole load of other people, and Melissa and Liz, teaching and training, and that was good fun too. And then we set up our annual meeting, which I'm really proud of. So this is our meeting that we run every year, where we have UCL, UCH, Institute for Women's Health, Great Ormond Street people teaching us, lecturing at a meeting, showing the excellence that's available. And part of the job was then taking on the subspecialty training program. And as Anna said, I've been very lucky to be involved in the training of many of my colleagues and people who've gone on and done extremely well. Anna, Melissa, Aparna. I call them affectionately my children. There were 2 who didn't send me a photo. Can you guess which are the 2? McKelvey didn't. Asma, Simona Cicero, Ruth, guess who? Tom, Spiros, thank you for coming. Sarah, Ahmad, bless him. Angela, Dan, Lindsay, Adelina, and Diane, and Sophie. So I managed it, thank God for that. There was an anxiety for a bit that I forgot. And my present trainees, Matthias, Lindsay, Rose, and Natalie. But they are my children. I'm very proud of them. They've done really well, and it's been great. And then I meet my very good friend from Mumbai, kindly put me up for the RCOG Sims Black visiting professorship. So that was great fun. Mumbai, lecturing north, south, east, west of India. So Mumbai, Calcutta, and then of course Leslie dancing away. Ed, I was in Chandigarh and Goa, and a great time had by all. And clinically, it would be rude of me not to put this slide up. The midwives will know why I put this up. Clinically, I was very fortunate to have really a fantastic time at UCH. I've been a great fan of invasive testing, and I've always tried to encourage people to do invasive testing under any opportunity. And back in 2013, we had a case referred to us, which basically had an upper airway obstruction, a fetal upper airway obstruction. The only way you can deliver these babies is by delivering them on placental circulation. So you do a cesarean section, you deliver the baby, you intubate the baby, or you secure her airway, and then you cut the cord. And we had this case, and Pat was clinical director at the time. It was all set up, but the neonatologist, who's no longer with us, Janet Rennie, wrote to the medical director saying, this is inappropriate, dangerous care, they shouldn't be doing this, they should send the patient elsewhere. So on that weekend, phoning around, trying to find somebody else to do this case, Pat thankfully supported us all the way, and we managed to do the very first exit with Paolo, who I see, thank you for coming, the gifted Richard here, Rima, who's here at the anaesthetist, and Colin, and Pat, and we got the service up and running. And that set the precedent for us to then go on and have the open fetal surgery program, which was obviously run by Anna, Donald and Jan. And that was implemented on the back of us establishing the exit program and then building on it, and obviously building with excellence to the extent that we won the BMJ Leadership Award in 2019. And from a national perspective, I was very fortunate to meet Peter Suthill at a meeting in about 2008. He said, "What's your interest?" I said, "Cardiac screening." He said, "Why don't you co-chair the group that is going to be involved in establishing the standards for the 2010, the Fetal Anomaly Screening Program standards for screening?" And I said, well, with Pat Ward being the program director at that time. And I said, "That was very kind, thank you." And then I went on to be appointed as the chair of the Fetal Anomaly Screening Program back in 2012. And I was lucky to work with Annette, Jane, who I know is here. I've seen her, Nadia, Rebecca, Dave Wright, and Kevin Spencer and Jenny, and a bunch of other people. And sort of summarizing the achievements that we had at that time, can you believe it? Nuchal translucency that Kypros described in the 90s, that was my MD thesis, is standard of care for everyone. Anyone who's had a baby here in England will probably have had a nuchal scan done. And that's still standard of care. And performance in England is very, very good indeed. And this was the paper that I was very proud of. In addition, 2010 was the first standards. 2015 was when we had the first national congenital anomaly register. So we could audit our screening performance as to how we were doing in detecting fetal anomalies. And those are the standards set on the far right, and we far exceeded them. And one of my failures, I'm afraid, is that our detection rates in the first trimester was extremely good, but I failed to implement standards in the first trimester. Massive resistance, and I'm still trying, but definitely a failure. But this data also helped us to look at individual units around the country, to look at performance, to try and improve performance on a regional basis. So something I was very proud of. You're missing this little bit here, which is a real shame, actually. This is Kypros, I've got Kypros's name there, November the 11th, 2011, 12. Kypros came and presented at the Gary Travellers meeting, and this was his slide. So this was the very first slide looking at cell-free DNA screening for Down syndrome. And at that time, no one believed it. I bet Jane Fisher dinner on it. I think this is never going to happen in my lifetime. And this was the very first time he presented that data, and it's been a game changer. So taking a blood sample from mum, looking at baby's DNA, has changed the way that we screen for chromosomal abnormalities with very, very high detection rates, very low false positive rates. The National Screening Committee reviewed all the evidence in the literature in 2016, took us forever for lots of complex reasons, and we implemented a contingent model in 2021. And I am very proud of that. It has reduced the number of invasive procedures. I'm super proud of what we've achieved. And we are writing the RCOG Green Top guideline, which should be finished drafting relatively soon with Kypros, Mark Kilbury, Aris, and others. So that's a story from fetal cells to free fetal DNA. So moving from fetal cells to free fetal DNA, that was the title. Now, some thanks, really. None of this would be possible without the Fetal Medicine Unit that I love dearly, and all the team that's within it. The midwives are our core being of how we survive and exist in that environment. They are the ones who support us through every single thing. They are the solid structure that keeps our department running. And for them, they know how grateful I am for everything they've done to help to develop the department. The massive multidisciplinary team, and there are many people here. Those of you who've been already mentioned won't be mentioned again. But there are many, many, and I know Paul's here, I know Vicky's here, I know Taz and Az are here, the neonatal team, Eleni, the MRI team, and then all the doctors that I've worked with on the dark side who've supported me as well. And happy birthday, Dean. Katrina, thank you for teaching me so much. I think you were an SR when I was a medical student here. Anand, the geneticist, Ahmed, a student with us, and it goes on. Amit as well, thank you, and Dana, thank you. So lots and lots of people that make a department. It's never about an individual, it is about a collective. And this collective is what's made a difference. And it would be wrong of me not to include the Labour team who bail us out on a regular basis. I want to say a few words about Fred, who we appointed as a fellow, but who's been a huge asset to our department. It'd be wrong not to have an image of him with an ultrasound machine. He's a friend, a colleague, and a huge asset to everything we do from a clinical service and teaching perspective. Davide, Rita, Amos, our MFEU fellows, and of course, Jan, who helped establish our fetal surgical program. And then almost last but not least, the consultants who are individually absolutely brilliant. They set standards nationally, internationally, but yet they come together and share a vision and direction. It's a rare mix of very, very gifted people who come together and share a friendship and a desire to do the best we possibly can. And to the consultants, I'm enormously grateful for everything you do, and you know that. And my two greatest mentors, I mean, you know, I would be nothing, absolutely nothing, if it wasn't for both Kipros and Charles, who supported my career in training, who helped to mentor me, nurture me, teach me how to do things. Their leadership skills of Charles, him being next door when I was a junior consultant, helping me, allowing me to grow, giving me that confidence to be able to grow as an individual consultant. I cannot thank them enough. Panita, who supported me for all of those years. It'd be very wrong not to mention her. I'm extremely grateful. And then all my friends who are, I haven't got all of you here, but there's a lot of my friends who have made my life a thorough joy. For me, those of you who know me, that my efforts are about work hard, play hard. I have a lot of friends who make a big difference. And then to Angela, of course, and Moch, doggy Angela, who makes me laugh all the time and who supported me through a very difficult stage in my life. Thank you. And this slide is for all those people I failed to mention, but I need to say thank you. So I really am coming to the end, I promise you. We are a result of our genes and our environment. We are who we are because of the genes we inherit from our parents, our grandparents, and the environment that we live in. That is who we are, and that is how we become that way. And we're influenced by our environment. So I have great genes. My parents were winners. They were fabulous, and I have great siblings and a lovely family, and my nieces and nephews, and Alexander, as you can see, is a part of the family. My extensive family, who I am very close to, and I have a lot of affection to, and I know that they have always been very proud of me and very supportive of everything I've done. To my mum, who made massive sacrifices, coming from East Africa, where she had everything, to England, where she had nothing and had to do everything for us, but never really complained and did it all with great love for all of us, but I was the most loved. To my brother, Sandip, who's here, who was more of a father figure to me than my father, who's been my greatest supporter and champion, who supported me through all the journey, I'm extremely grateful. Those of you who know me, my daughter, my pride and joy, couldn't be more proud of you, love, and I'm really grateful you came from Seville to be here today. Very, very important for me, and I'm very grateful, thank you. But I love you to the moon and back. So I'm ending now. Which is more important, asked the big panda, the journey or the destination? The company, said Tiny Dragon. It's about the company that makes all the difference. So I end. Am I an imposter? Am I somebody who's just been very privileged? Am I somebody who's been just very lucky, or a suitable boy? Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. It's really very nice to be able to do this. Thank you very much, Anna, for asking me. Every inaugural is special, but I think we have really heard a very, very special one. It's the first one I've ever been at where there was a standing ovation, which is very well deserved. So this is a very important and rather emotional experience. As you've heard, I appointed Pran to a subspecialty training post, and then a few years later to a consultant post. Now, this was in the face of very stiff opposition, but I have to say he walked it. There was never any doubt. In the year since I've retired, I've kept in touch and kept my eye on things, and I've watched with admiration how the Fetal Medicine Unit has grown and thrived. It's become a place where the people, the staff, want to go and work, and it's a place where other people want to come and work. And this attests to Pran's many skills. And I think perhaps one of the most important, which is not mentioned very often, is his, and he has this in spades, is his team building ability. So this is a wonderful unit, and I think those who work there will attest to that. And this is going to continue, I hope, for a long time. So I'm not going to detain you any longer. You can go to the reception, and there you can drink to Pran's achievements, past and future.
The reception, I mean, I'm sure we could start walking over there. They're expecting us for 6:30, but there are two ways of getting there. I'm not sure if we can get onto, we probably can't get out of the store, can we? Do you think we can get out the front? We can either go through the quad. We can't get out of this onto the Gow Street. We'll try. Just stick with us, and please do come to the reception. It'd be nice to say hello and thank you to everybody. So we're going to head over there shortly.